Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the show. IB Nation Sports Talk up and running along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. How are you today, Jess?
I'm doing pretty well today. A little bit tired. Got up, had to run 2 miles as part of my workout this morning. So my legs are
Woo.
feeling a little bit, you
Two
know,
miles.
little sore. 2 miles, pull ups, all of the action. So I'm feeling a little beat today, but I gotta get the spirits up. We have the show, and then afterwards, like I told you, I'm going to see the Lakers are in town this evening against the Cavaliers. So LeBron James is the reason why I got into watching the NBA. I've never actually seen him play in person, so this is gonna be a lot of fun
Huh.
tonight. I'm really excited to go see this game tonight.
All right. Sounds good to me. Well, we've got a lot that we're going to get to in the course of this show, and we're going to have to keep it relatively short. We'll see how long we can go tonight, so that Jesse can get out the door and get to that game later tonight. Glad to have you with us, though, here on the show. A lot to be resolved before the Gator Bowl, December 30th in Jacksonville, Notre Dame and South Carolina, the Gamecocks and the Fighting Irish. And we just confirmed today there will definitely be an IB countdown to kickoff that morning. It is a Friday, so that's we had to get the confirmation from the boss today, and it is confirmed. We will have a countdown to kick off the day of the Gator Bowl, and of course, there'll be the typical post-game show and the whole thing. But I tell you what, man, this transfer portal just blew up. I mean, all it took was one day, and it's like quarterback you in the transfer portal right now. Oh, and speaking of whatevers, we had our little friends pop in the chat there. Drew Pine, of course, we knew he was going to enter the portal. We talked a little bit about DJ Uiagalelei yesterday, but you've got Brennan Armstrong from Virginia, Graham Mertz from Wisconsin, Phil Jerkovic, who's already made a commitment. We'll talk about that a little bit later. You got the NC State quarterback, Devin Leary. You've got Hudson Card from Texas. JT Daniels is back in the portal. Keaton Slovis is back in the portal. It's like who's who of quarterback you in the college football transfer portal right now.
Yeah, it's kind of insane. I saw a tweet the other day that said, all these guys are transferring, but are there even enough roster spots to bring these guys home somewhere? It's crazy to see. I'm really glad that a lot of these guys are getting, the opportunity. I just don't want it to become what often a lot of things become, and that's abusing the portal, right? It's supposed to be used for good things, to get guys kind of out of situations that aren't necessarily their fit anymore. I just don't want to see a guy hopping in the portal every year because
look at Daniels and Slovis, man. 2 years in a row.
Right, and that's what
in the portal.
That's what I don't know. I just feel it just feels a little bit uneasy. Maybe they can amend it and add like a 2-year rule. You can't, once you're in the portal, you have to wait, 2 years before you can potentially go back in the portal again. Just something like I'm a fan of what the opportunities that the portal creates, and I think it's great for someone like Drew Pine, who knows he can be a starter somewhere, but is essentially probably not going to be the starter again at Notre Dame. Knowing what Notre Dame's future is going forward and what Notre Dame wants at quarterback, it makes sense for someone like him to transfer out. But I just don't want guys hopping in to hop in. It's just there's got to be some sort of competition at the end of the day.
And we've got the comment here, right? Like Tyler was saying, transfer portal is 10 times better than NFL free agency right now. Well, it might be because you've got you've got these two windows now. You've got this window right here that'll close in a few weeks. And then after spring football, there'll be another window where you can go in and out. And that's kind of where Marcus Freeman, I think he thought Drew Pine was going to be when he told Drew Pine what their plans are, bringing a guy, potentially let him compete, for a job in the spring. But Pine said, well, I'm out now. He's going to go find himself a team right now. But they've at least got a couple of windows, so they're trying to control it. But I agree. It's like when you just open it up every year, at least in the NFL, you have contracts a national letter of intent obviously is not the same as a contract these days, because you can just go in and out. And you've got guys who are trying to bolster their draft stock, kind of like with Brandon Joseph when he came over here to Notre Dame from Northwestern last year. You've got guys like Lincoln Riley who inherited a really bad roster. Even Brian Kelly, to an extent, inherited a really bad roster at their new schools at USC and LSU, respectively. And so, what do? You go to the portal, you bolster it, and look how quickly Lincoln Riley was able to turn things around in USC. It ain't just because he's a good coach, it's because he went out and he got experienced players, guys like one of his own, Caleb Williams. And then, even though they'll try to convince you that nothing shady went on, they went out and got Jordan Addison from Pitt, even though his name wasn't even in the portal when the news came out that they were going after him in the NIL collaborative and all that different kind of stuff. And that's the that's the other layer to this that can make things more nefarious, is the fact that you do have the lure of the NIL, where your name goes in and it literally becomes like free agency because you can cash in with the lure of whatever NIL promise that you get from going from one school to the next. And that's still the thing that has to be controlled in all this in college football, but there has been no real appetite to try to control that so far, just in the short life of name, image, and likeness.
Yeah, and I think another thing that this transfer portal is going to do, to be honest with you, is it's going to equal out the playing field. I think we saw it a little bit this year, but I think we're gradually going to see it kind of progress towards a more even playing field. And what I mean by that is the Alabamas of the world, the Clemsons of the world, whoever can get on these, USC in the early 2000s. I don't think we're going to see any more dynasty-esque programs anymore, or at least be trending down away from it because of the way that guys can leave and teams can be, assembled in a year. Look at USC, for
True.
example. They were a contention, a bad team last year, and then this year they're all of a sudden in contention for a playoff spot. I think we're going to see a lot more teams have that kind of USC success and kind of pop up out of nowhere just after 1 year because of the guys that they can get in through the transfer portal. And again,
Yeah.
I think this is why Saban kind of got a little grouchy at the beginning of the season, because he knows that it's going to be harder for someone like himself, because he can't just hold on to 5-star recruits for 3-4 years, however it might be, and these guys are going to leave after just 1 year. And we already saw that a lot of Alabama guys have already put their name in the portal, and these are 4 or 5-star guys. And again, I just think that we're going to see a more leveling of the playing field, and we're going to see teams kind of have those spontaneous 1-year wonders where they hop into the playoff conversation after just being bad only a year ago.
Yeah. Now, see, people are asking about how many times you can go in the portal. Athletes there's supposed to be a one-time transfer, and that's what I don't like, where you have to sit out the second time. So I don't know exactly where we are with all this, because they've come up with some of these proposals, they get discussed, they get shot down, nothing passes, and but it's, as someone mentioned, Daniels is in there for the third time. Slovis is in there once again. He's already, this will be his second transfer already. So I don't know. It's nuts. It's out of control, but you're absolutely right. You can manicure your roster very quickly. And with all these quarterbacks in there, and you know, Alabama losing Bryce Young, I wonder if Nick Saban decides he's going to dip in and find himself. Maybe that's why some of these guys Okay, I think we're back. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm good. Just a short, delay. Back on schedule.
Here we are.
That can be
Yeah,
edited
so
out.
my internet just basically shut off right in the middle of everything. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but the internet modem shut down. So fortunately, I've got the old hotspot on my phone, so I'm running on the hotspot right now. So hopefully, I mean, we were only gone for what, a minute or so, right? We
Yeah, and
spun it around pretty quick. I thought it was a pretty good pit stop.
I think another what you were getting into talking about, Saban and Bryce Young, and a name you
Yes,
hadn't mentioned yet is I've heard the name Drake May as someone else who's potentially going into the portal. It's not
it's
100%
out there.
confirmed,
Yeah.
and he had a terrific season with Mac Brown. I thought that was a great fit. And if that kind of guy goes into the portal, it's just like what do you have to do in order to feel like you can fit? And
I know.
again, I've heard the rumor too that Saban has his eye on someone like Drake May. So all this is kind of
Wouldn't doubt it.
speculation, but again, it's like there's just so much uncertainty. And I think the number one thing that this shows and what USC shows, a Caleb Williams makes them a two-loss team. I think without Caleb Williams, they're a 4 or 5 loss team
Mhm.
potentially. And so when all these quarterbacks, these talented quarterbacks, are going into the transfer portal, I mean, these are game-changing players. These are guys who can boost you from 2, 3, 4 wins, whatever it might be. And I know not everyone's Caleb Williams and a Heisman finalist, but there's going to be people like him. Drake May is a perfect example of a guy who can have a
Well,
similar path to Caleb Williams.
look, what everyone in this chat is probably sitting here saying right now is, where can we get us one of them? you know, it's like, where does that guy come from who's going to end up in a gold helmet next year and wearing blue and gold and some green every now and then? I mean, that's it, because just look at this year and Aiton, you just said Caleb Williams was the difference between USC, what they ended up with, going 10-2 and 8. Well, I guess they ended up
11 and 2.
11-1 for the regular season and then lost the conference championship game. But just like we said, you drop Caleb Williams onto this Notre Dame team and let him do his Caleb Williams stuff. That's going to go a long way. And so what level Notre Dame goes for, the guy that they can get in here, the whole thing, I'm going to be really curious to see where that goes, because we know they're out there looking for a portal quarterback. That's part of Drew Pine's decision to leave, part of it, not the whole thing. But where are they going to go? What are they going to end up with? It's going to be really interesting. That kid out there at NC State, Leary, is a name that keeps popping up in connection with Notre Dame. So I'll be curious to see how that goes. By the way, Jess, someone said, I think it was last week, wasn't it, that they said, well, you guys, the only NFL you guys talk about is Dallas Cowboys. I can't understand why anyone would think that, right? Like,
Yeah, I don't know. And
huh,
there's not we don't like the Cowboys in this show. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, Tyler is saying, what portal quarterback would we like to join Notre Dame? I mean, I'd take Drake May if he
Oh
sticks
my
his name
gosh.
in right now. Wouldn't you? Of the guys who are in there right now, I
No,
don't.
no one really sat like I know that there's
Yeah,
a lot of
there's
solid guys in there, but
pros and cons to. Yeah, exactly.
there's no one in there where I'm like, they absolutely should go after this guy. Like, I'm like, all right, this guy could work, or this guy kind of makes sense. Like, if they want to push, Buchner and these kind of incoming freshmen, and just the if Drake May put his name in there, that would be I would literally do anything and everything to have him at Notre Dame. I think he's the perfect type of fit for what they
Yeah,
want to do with their offense. He's very young. But yeah, I just out of the names that are in there right now, no one's like, wow, no one's blowing off my socks quite yet.
yeah. Shannon, I entered the portal and I pulled my name back out very quickly. I decided it was not worth it. I had to stick. I'm gonna do team stuff right now, so I thought about it. It was a dark hole, and I pulled my name right back out. So here we are. We're ready to go. Going forward, getting ready for the Gator Bowls. We head into the offseason. Hit that like button if you would. To all of our YouTube live watchers, we do appreciate it. Subscribe, rate, and review. Well, we've got a lot more time to talk about transfer portals and all that stuff, because it's That's what's going on right now. Today's only day 2. Over 1,000 names went in on day 1 yesterday, and there's going to be even more. So I'm really curious to see exactly where it goes. And we've seen some other players, not just quarterbacks, tweeting out that they have received offers from Notre Dame. So we know that Notre Dame early on is being aggressive, going after some of these guys. So a lot of action that's going to take place. Well, we better keep moving here a little bit because, again, we're on a little bit of a compressed timeline, and we've already had a technical issue tonight. Jesse's got to head out, not early, but he's got a hard cutoff for tonight so he can get to a basketball game. Speaking of quarterbacks, though, how do you feel about the fact, as we've ingested this now a few days later, Tyler Buchner, how do you feel like we're going to see, as long as Tyler Buchner ends up being completely, medically cleared, we're going to see a lot of Tyler Buchner in the Gator Bowl. What do you think?
I'm really torn on whether or not I think Tyler Buchner should actually even be playing this bowl game, because he missed an entire season. He hasn't been and not only has he missed the entire season, like game wise, but he hasn't been practicing. Like, he's just now got into the back in the practicing of things. And so your team is at one point and Tyler Buchner is on a completely different kind of point. Like, the path to synchronize everyone up, I think, is a little bit more challenging than what people are going to want to admit. And then you have Steve Angeli, on the other hand, who, even though he hasn't played any games, he's done the practice. He's done the 2 reps. Angeli hasn't played, but he's practiced the entire year. He's taken all the snaps. He's taken far more snaps than Buchner has this season. And so I'm really torn because, Buchner takes, I know he's been cleared to play and whatever. And at this point, the chances of him getting hurt in a bowl game compared to next season are probably pretty similar in terms of, being cleared to play. But for me, I would be still pretty limited and reserved about making, Buchner 100% the guy going into this bowl game. And so I think there needs to be some sort of split between Tyler Buchner and Steve Angeli and their usage in this bowl game. And I think that you can do different things with each of them. And I think you can accomplish different things while kind of protecting both of them at the same time.
Well, Terry says it wouldn't start Buchner. I would give Stevie a shot to show the staff is fair. And I guess what is fair is fair whoever the better guy is in the coaching. To me, fair is if one shows he's better than the other in practice, that's who you go with. And Tyler Buchner won the job to begin with. It's not, fair isn't, well, you've been here all year and you've been practicing, so now's fair and you get to make this start. To me, it's whoever the better guy is, that's who's going to start. And I understand what you're saying, Jesse, but if the lean is already Tyler Buchner and what you've said, because Angeli has had snaps with the number 2 team all season long, but the feeling, the vibe definitely seems to be, I don't think they're just handing this to Tyler Buchner. I do feel like if they thought that Angeli was the guy, there would be more of a lean right now toward Steve Angeli. So, we're not going to be able to see an open quarterback competition in practices or anything like that. I do feel like there is a benefit because, again, this is a bowl game. It's an 8-4 season. Do you want to compete in and have a chance to win a bowl? Absolutely. But I do think that there is a benefit at the very least of playing both of these guys in the Gator Bowl. What do you think? So that seemed to be the direction you were leaning there in what you said. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that Tyler Buchner is the better quarterback. I mean, at the beginning of the season, he was QB1 and Angeli was QB3 on the depth chart, right? Like, there was a guy between the two. So obviously Tyler Buchner is a better quarterback. Again, I'm just worried about, I know he can be ready, but that doesn't mean he's ready to be caught up to where the team is at now and all of that time that he missed as quarterback. So I think that you let Buchner play, but I think you also let Angeli play. And we've seen Notre Dame do this before. I mean, I can't think of when Brian Kelly against LSU in one of those bowl games, he played both quarterbacks and they were kind of riding the hot hand. And he brought in Ian Book towards the end and he won the game. Yep. He won the game for them. And so I just think it's ultimately going to come down to a feel thing. in the moment, which I hate. I don't like switching quarterbacks in and out during a game because then it feels like you're punishing guys just for having a bad sequence.
And I'm not saying in and out. I'm saying you have a specific plan, and I think that's the biggest question. Like if you're deciding, you do have these two different guys, and you've got at least different skill sets. And Jelly, more of a pocket guy than Tyler Buchner. Buchner has much better wheels, obviously, the mobility and everything else. With Tyler Buchner last year, it was easy to find a way to get him on the field because of the much more contrasting style that he had from Jack Cohn. He could give you, some things with his legs. If you're starting Tyler Buchner, then going to Steve Angeli, it doesn't make as much sense. Where Brian Kelly, remember, started using Ian Book, or where it's, it kind of flipped anyway, was like, he was like red zone and white zone and blue zone, all these different zones where you're down there around the end zone. That's kind of how we found a way to get Ian Book on the field ultimately. Even though in 2018, when Book ultimately overtook Brandon Wimbush's skill set, because of his legs, would have seemed to be better suited for the red zone, but that's where he started putting Ian Book in, and everything turned around. Book ends up being the starter. They end up going to the playoff. But I guess my point is, if you're starting with Buchner and then you're going with Angeli, just looking at it on the surface right now, I don't know that there is a natural place that you try to get Angeli in, like situationally. But at the same time, you could say, okay, second quarter, or second series of the the third, wherever it happens to be, you can say, okay, you're going to get in there for a series, that kind of thing. Would that be suitable? Does that make sense in your mind? And I remember you played on a team, Jesse, where the quarterback, I think you had like 4 different starting quarterbacks in the first month or 5 weeks of a season once, didn't you?
Yeah, and that's what I'm ultimately trying to get at, is there needs to be synchronization, with the entire offense, considering, Notre Dame runs an offense that's not pass heavy. It's pass complementary football. They pass the ball off of their run game. And so ultimately, if the run game's moving with Angeli in there, just hand the ball off and he can complete those kind of layup passes that they're asking Drew Pine to make, then sure, I think that Angeli can do a lot of things that Buchner could. And so why does it make sense to run Buchner out there just to run him out there after he's been out the entire season with injury? And I guess that is ultimately what I'm looking at, is if you're going to play both, there needs to be a designated plan on how you're going to use both. It's not just a feel of the moment thing. You need to have designated drives. Okay, we're going to go 2 drives, Buchner, 1 drive, Angeli, or maybe 2 and 2, and then see how things are kind of going after that. I think that you have to be really scripted with both of them in the beginning, give them opportunity, and kind of get a feel of who's going to be able to run the offense better and who's going to give you the best chance to win the game. And the way I look at it is, Buchner would ultimately be used in more of run packages, but I don't think that he needs to have any designated quarterback runs. There's no reason that he needs to take a hit in this bowl game.
But now, so you seem to be in the camp of, you don't think he should be playing in this game because of the injury. Like, you don't want to see him play in this game because he's still coming back from an injury. Is that kind of where you are on this?
Yeah, but
like,
the game,
just rather see Angeli play and Buchner is the emergency quarterback.
I would like to see Angeli be the starter and Buchner be the complimentary guy if things maybe start to go a little bit south more quickly. I don't see the advantage. The game matters a lot, and I think that there should be every intention to win the bowl game. And I saw someone in the chat, is farther up there, say, it's everyone's acting like this game doesn't matter. This game 100% matters. You're playing a top tier SEC opponent, and schools look at the playoff committee they don't look at these things, but they take it into consideration. They look to see how you did when you started to play teams outside of who you usually play. Like, they usually play the ACC. And they're other kind of traditional schools throughout the year. But when you start playing teams that are outside of your normal, I guess, class of who you might play, they want to see if you can hang, with potentially some of the top tier SEC schools. And so I think it's important that Notre Dame has a good showing and that they ultimately win this game. And I think what gives them the best opportunity is finding a combination of both of those guys to play.
I think it's more important, again, if Tyler Buchner is healthy, and it is important to remember, and we've brought this up before, and someone else just brought it up as well, this is his non-throwing shoulder that we're talking about. If this were his throwing shoulder, I don't think it would probably be an option for him to come back, because there's just a different kind of wear and tear and use, obviously, of your throwing arm when you've had this kind of surgery compared to your non-throwing arm, where you're obviously not using it as much. You're always going to be at risk for taking a hit and getting re-injured, whether it is, right after you have been cleared to play, or, 6 weeks, 6 months, whenever after you have been cleared to play. There's always going to be a risk of that. To me, I think it's important that if Tyler Buchner is healthy, he gets out there on the field and he runs the regular offense that Drew Pine got to run throughout the course of the season, so that the coaching staff, so that one, he gives them potentially the best chance to win the game, as you've talked about, because the games matter. So that he gives them the best chance to win because of, there's a reason he started the season off as the starting quarterback. And this team is different now, so that this coaching staff can evaluate him and use him essentially as close to the way that that they used Drew Pine, but hopefully he performs at a little bit higher level, which is what you would expect considering he was the starting quarterback to begin with. But like, you look at those first couple games of the season, they averaged like 3.5 yards a carry in the loss to Marshall. Against Ohio State, what were they? They were like 2.5 yards per carry against Ohio State, 3.5 against Cal, but then it starts to kick up. 5.5 against North Carolina, almost 6.5 against BYU, even against Stanford, almost 4.5. So, like you went on and on and on. Navy and USC were the aberrations late, but, so like they were running the ball legitimately against those teams. And that's a much different look for him, especially when he is involved. I'm kind of excited to see what a real Tyler Buchner offense, a Tyler Buchner-led offense could be with him, his skill set, plus the offensive line in a different place, plus the running backs in a different place than they were in weeks 1 and 2 when he was out there.
Yeah, and I think another aspect of the game is if Tyler Buchner is going to play, I want to see them take some shots that go along with it, because you're taking away an element of dimension potentially in his game, because I guarantee they're not going to let him run as many, RPOs, quarterback keepers, quarterback design runs. And so let him let it loose, let him rip it if that's the case, because if you're going to play him, use him to the best of your ability, take it full advantage of what he can do. And he's known to have a better arm than Drew Pine. And that's been, a problem for them this year, is creating offense downfield. And so I'd like to see, if Tyler Buchner is going to play, I want to see him let it loose. I want to see him take some chances. I want to see him, basically use his arm as his weapon instead of his legs. Obviously they're going to have the run game, but I'd like to see him use his arm more, and the potential that he has in his arm, because that's the biggest question around Tyler Buchner, is if he can lead this offense, they need to have some sort of downfield presence, and he needs to, if that's the whole point of this game, is to, have momentum going into next year, well, then let him rip it. Let him take those shots downfield. And again, I think we get caught up again on who's the starter and who's not the starter. At the end of the day, it matters to who's taking more reps, what the reps come down to, who's getting, how many series you're getting. And so, sure, you can name one guy a starter, the other guy not a starter. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to who is leading the offense better and who has better rhythm. How does the offense respond to who's playing quarterback? Who has the better rhythm amongst the offense? If that's Angeli, I think that you have to let him play and let Buchner take kind of a back seat. But vice versa, I think if Buchner is leading the offense and they're putting up points, then there's no reason to bring Angeli in for no reason.
Well, I don't disagree with that. And they're going to have plenty of chances to evaluate that during their bowl, practices, which they've already started. They've already started some of those practices. Now, I don't think Buchner is like Marcus Freeman said, full go. They're not putting any hits on him right now. I'm not exactly sure that he's cleared for that, but that obviously has to come. And again, if you're going to put him in a game, he's got to be cleared for that. But it's not like they're going to be doing a lot of live actual hitting on the quarterbacks anyway. And we've got this, like Tyler said, wide receivers open all year. Pine didn't pull the trigger, flat out missed, and I saw kind of some back and forth on that a little bit ago. And there was it's I don't want to put it all on Drew Pine, but again, there were 5 games where Drew Pine was 70% or better. There were 5 games where Drew Pine was like 55, 52% or worse. Tyler Buchner's 2 starts, he was right there in that 55% range. And again, the running game was not nearly what it ended up being when Drew Pine was out there. Because again, like you go to the Clemson game, it's not like they won the Clemson game because of Drew Pine. He was basically a game manager in that game, and they ran the ball down Clemson's throat. And I think at least the presence of Tyler Buchner even adds to that and can potentially give him better opportunities in the passing game, because the biggest thing for him, though, I still think is going to be, it's not that he can't throw the ball and he's not accurate. I think the biggest thing for him is how quickly he makes his reads and how he makes those reads and when he's willing to deliver the ball, because I think that he was, maybe at times a beater so slow in making some of those reads and, making those deliveries. But he's a young quarterback who hadn't played, that real full football in over a year. It was one thing to get him on the field as a package guy last year, but now to actually go out and run a full offense, he looks slow on that. How much did that time up in the coach's booth with Tommy Reese and the offensive staff, how much did that help him in sitting in the film sessions and all that stuff? He's had an opportunity to learn, but he's got to show he can go out and do it now. And again, I think this is important for him, potentially Steve Angeli as well, when you do have most likely a new quarterback that's going to be joining the team this spring.
And I think another important aspect and something that we really haven't touched on is the psychological factor of Tyler Buchner getting into this game, because, you can do all the practice and you come back from rehab, but, the matter of the fact is that until you get into a game, keep that comment up because I want to get to that too. That was going to be my second point. But there's the psychological aspect of, when you come back from injury, you're always going to wonder if you're ready until you take that first hit. And I know you can, they do certain things in practice, and I'm sure they're not going to let him get hit full throttle before this game. But that's another thing is Tyler Buchner is going to be under shotgun in one of these first couple plays. And I guarantee you, he's going to look around and be thinking about, okay, if I take this hit, am I going to get hurt again? Or how do I need to land to avoid getting hurt? And so there's going to be a psychological barricade that he needs to get past. And I think that's an advantage of a potential advantage of him playing this game is he can get through that now and clear it, for next season. Next season, you won't have to worry about or going through all of camp thinking about, okay, am I back yet? Can I do what I, used to be able to do? Because if you get him out there now, he clears that kind of psychological barrier of, what an injury kind of does to athletes. And I think it's a huge thing that not a lot of people talk about is you're not 100% confident until you're out there and you take that hit and you get it out of the way. And then moving on to what Decab 18 said here, I'm not hell-bent on TB12 not playing, and I do agree that he deserves the spot because it was his, and injury should never, be why you lose a job. I'm just saying I fear that there's a lot of things that have to get synchronized up before this bowl game. And if they can get everything synchronized up, I'm 100% on board with Buchner being the starter. But like I said, he missed out on all of this time. The offense is in a completely different place. He needs to get synced up with where the offense is at. He needs to get synced up mentally. He needs to get synced up, physically. Is he in condition to even be playing in a full bowl game? I'm just saying there's a lot of things that need to add up before I can just say that he deserves to be the starter and he's the guy that should start out there for the bowl game.
But is it what's the biggest thing for you? The injury or just that he has to earn his way back?
The injury. I don't think he has to earn anything back. He just needs to show that he can be synced up where the entire team is at and bridge that gap from where he left off to where the team is at now, because that was almost 16 weeks ago. That's a long amount of time, and you can watch all the film and you can be on the same page with your offensive coordinator, but until you physically go out there and get game reps, you're not going to be synchronized up off the first snap.
Yeah, I agree. But at the same time, I think it's important to remember that he has been out there on the practice field, at least to some extent, for a couple of weeks. Again, he wasn't like fully padded and in uniforms and all that stuff when he started off, but he was out there on the field starting to do, some different drills and do so. He has worked his way back up. And Marcus Freeman said the other day that he's full go. And but he also said, hey, we've got three quarterbacks right now. We've got Tyler Buchner, we've got Steve Angeli, and we've got Ron Paulus. So, you know, I don't know. I just think that if he's healthy, there's no reason that he shouldn't play because he was your number one quarterback at the start of the season. I agree with what you're saying. He's missed a lot of time. He does have to show in practice that he's able to do it. Stymie asking about Tobias Merriweather. Has he finally cleared concussion issues? Is he practicing? From what we understand, yes, he is. I don't think that he's doing any contact and stuff like that right now, but at least doing like 7-on-7 stuff where he's out there running pass routes and he's got a defensive back covering him, and obviously quarterbacks throwing the ball and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that that's what Tyler Buchner is, and Steve Angeli and Ron Paulus, what all three of them are doing right now. So, there's plenty of evaluation time that they're going to have on these guys. That's a bowl game is you get extra prep time. So this gives them, it's almost like another training camp that Tyler Buchner is going through as he tries to gear himself up. I would not want him to rush back too soon. But again, I think the fact that this is the non-throwing shoulder as opposed to the throwing shoulder, it definitely shifts kind of how I would approach it. And like I said, I think if it was his throwing shoulder, he would probably not be in a place where he is this close to being able to return. I don't think he would be out there on the practice field right now if it was his throwing shoulder that he had the same injury to, because then, you're obviously talking about, a lot more use and a lot more that you need out of that shoulder as opposed to your off shoulder. So, all right. Austin, I believe it was in practice. It didn't, it was definitely one of those things that we didn't really know about until all of a sudden it came game time and they announced that he was going to be out due to concussion protocol. And I'm trying to remember which game. I think it was Navy, if I remember right now off the top of because he missed the last 3 games. So it would have been the Navy game, I believe, is when they announced that he was going to be out. And I can't remember, again, specifically at that time if they said concussion protocol right away, but that's what it's been. And I realize some people wonder, man, well, it's been, as long as it took, why was he out for all that time? I don't know if you remember this guy, Brian Roberts. Jesse, he was an infielder for the Baltimore Orioles a few years back, and I know we've got an Orioles fan or two in here. He slid headfirst into second base once and ended up with a concussion, and it took him weeks, if not even, it took him a long time just on a simple play like that where he slid headfirst into second base and did something. It's just everyone's brain is a little bit different. They all respond a little bit differently. And in a sport like football, you always want to err on the safe side when you're talking about concussion protocol. I mean, you've had concussions before, Jesse. So I always say, err on the safe side. That's what you should always do with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the thing is everyone's brain reacts differently to concussions. Different guys go through different symptoms. It takes, and that's why you do baseline testing at the beginning of the season when you don't have a concussion, and then when you have, a concussion, there's different guys react differently. Some guys can get out there in a couple of days. Some guys can get out there in a few weeks. It just all depends on how you compare, back to your baseline testing and various other kind of assessments that they put you under.
Yes, I concur. And for Tommy Guns, Tommy, I didn't realize that was you on Twitter, but I did see your tweet about the seasonal life cycle of a Dallas Cowboys fan. I retweeted it with my own comment. Circle of life, lather, rinse, repeat, because it is basically the pain of being a Cowboys fan, of how you get your hope. The season starts wherever your expectations are. You get your hopes up when they start playing well, and then the playoffs come and they wash out. And I was actually thinking about that the other day because, like, you've been talking about, Jesse, about how great this team looks and maybe
They
the best
are.
team
It's the
that
best
you've
team that I've
seen.
seen since being alive.
Yes, and I definitely think it's the best defense that they have had since you've been alive.
But look at
I
they have
just
jumped from like 28th in offense to like first in offense since Dak has been back. I know it looks
which is
different,
amazing
but they
because it's
have
like
a
it
legit
seems
running
less
game.
consistent sometimes, you
Yeah,
know?
and it's just they just put up points. I don't know what it is, and I know we shouldn't go too deep into this or else we'll get yelled at. But it's just I feel that they have the best defense in the league. They create a lot of turnovers, and a really great defense can make up for a lot of things. And when you have a good running attack, you have a premier wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb. I think you can do a lot of great things. I think that this team is just built for what it means to win in the playoffs.
All right, we'll see. We'll see. I've been around for a lot of them. So, because I have seen that circle and cycle of life, and I'm beaten down by high expectations going into the playoffs only to come up with nothing. But we'll see. We'll see. I would say this: I'd take another loss to the Eagles in a couple of weeks in the regular season if they beat them in the playoffs. So,
It's what it will come down to.
with
It's
that.
who's going to win the third matchup.
Yep. Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's get this rapid fire rapiding.
All right, we got to do it because Jesse's got to get out a little bit early tonight. Heisman Trophy finalists announced yesterday. And once again, Notre Dame has not sniffed getting a player into the final group. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, what are the chances you give Notre Dame to have a Heisman Trophy finalist, within the next 6 years?
I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 10. I'm not super confident, and I'll tell you why. The award should honestly be changed to the best quarterback in college football because that's really all it comes down to. So then my confidence is rated on how soon can Notre Dame get a legit quarterback? How soon can they get that quarterback winning? How soon can Tommy Rees cook up an offense that really allows this quarterback to cook it to their best abilities? And I just think that's a lot to happen in a span of 6 years. And so I think that there's a chance, but not too great of a chance. So I'm going to sit around a 3 or a 4. And I'd like to say it's criminal that someone like Blake Corum, Bijan Robinson didn't get their name on there. I didn't like seeing 4 quarterbacks, and I especially didn't like the fact that Stetson Bennett was on there. My man from Tennessee had a way better season. And essentially they said, okay, you got hurt one game. You're no longer a Heisman finalist. So
Right.
again, I'm really frustrated with how the Heisman turned out this year. And again, it should just be the best quarterback because that's who ultimately gets it every year for the last 10 years, it feels like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know Ingram didn't get it within the last 10 years, but Mark Ingram and Derrick Henry, they might beg to differ. But still, it's like be a quarterback or be a running back for Alabama. That's essentially what gets you in there.
Seriously.
I'm gonna go much higher than you. I'm gonna give this a 7. And the question was scale of 1 to 10, the chances we give Notre Dame to have a Heisman finalist within the next 6 years. I'm gonna say 7 because with all this talent they're pulling in, and that includes at the quarterback position. If you're the Notre Dame quarterback, just ask Brady Quinn. Finished 3rd and he finished 4th in consecutive years in the Heisman voting. If you're the Notre Dame quarterback and you have a big year and your team is doing well, you're going to have a really good chance. And the recruiting is on the right quarterback position. So I'm much more bullish on this. Manti, of course, was their last finalist. That's already been 10 years ago, and that was a complete, one-off type season that a linebacker would ever get that. He won practically every other award, but I think they're going to have a chance because of the place that the recruiting is in, including at the quarterback position, which obviously, as you just outlined, is very important to be a good quarterback on a good team if you're going to win the Heisman. Stymie says 6 years, 7 is fair, but that bias is real. Well, I mean, 6 years puts you 16 years out since Manti Te'o was a Heisman finalist, right? And it took Manti, what did it end up being? Something like 18 years or something like that in between him and Rocket, when Rocket was runner-up to Ty Detmer. So, I mean, 16 years out, so we're not that far off. That kind of plays the odds like that they should at least have a finalist in there. someplace. Okay. Well, okay. Stymie says the anti Notre Dame bias. Okay. I got you. I think it works the other way, though, when you start, with the big awards and stuff like that. You're Notre Dame and you have a big enough year and you're successful. I think it'll work in their favor, actually. So, Jesse, the Dallas Cowboys, as you know, call the Zeke Elliott, Tony Pollard running back combo the sword and the sledgehammer. So what should we call the Notre Dame trio of Audric Estime, Chris Tyree, and Logan Diggs? They don't have a catchy name.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with, so Estime is the mini bus. I like to think of Chris Tyree as the Swiss Army knife because he can do all things. He can catch, he can run, he can return, he can do anything that you really ask him to do that involves being fast and open space. So I'm going to give him that title. And the one I really struggled with was Logan Diggs because I couldn't decide what to do. And this is going to sound real cliche, but I like to call him just the dig man because he can dig down into those holes and get out of them. I think that's his best talent is he hits the hole and he finds a way to dig out of the hole. And, he's good at getting to that second level and getting past the second level. So that was the kind of the three I went with. I didn't think of it as how can we, I like the A-gappers because that is like that encapsulates everyone.
Pretty good.
But I looked at it more of
They're
a
all hitting that A-gap.
Yeah, so I had the mini bus, the Swiss Army knife, and the dig man. I know those aren't great, but I tried my best. I'm not a really creative person. That's why.
So this might be a dated reference, and I don't know if you'll get it right away. But the thing that popped into my mind, planes, trains, and automobiles. Because have you ever heard of the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles? Big, like 80s Steve Martin, John Candy, classic. Holiday movie and all that stuff. Planes, Chris Tyree, he's fast as a jet, so he's like the plane in this equation. Trains, Audric Estime, he's the locomotive. And then automobiles, because Diggs is, like I get what you're saying about Tyree being the Swiss Army knife, but, Diggs is sort of a combo of the two of them. He's got some power, but he's also got a little wiggle to him, some moves and stuff like that. So he can do a little bit of everything. So I went planes, trains, and automobiles.
I like that one a lot better. I like Stymie's jab, hook, and uppercut as well.
Jab, hook, uppercut. I like that.
That's a real nice one.
That's really good.
I almost thought about Diggs being considered the Renaissance man, and the Renaissance used to mean in the day that you could do anything, and so that was kind of that to me is like what you were talking about. He's like the hybrid of both of them.
Right. Ed had good correction on me. And I mean, I even mentioned that Brady Quinn was a finalist, the fact that he finished third and fourth in consecutive. I guess I didn't say specifically, but you're right. I mean, it wasn't 18 years between Rocket and Manti because, of course, Quinn was a finalist before that. So you had two in an 18-year stretch, which means that 16 years, again, if you put mine from where Manti was 10 years ago to 6 years out, 16, then just numbers wise, they should have a finalist by then. So I'm going to bump mine up to 8. Thanks, Ed, for correcting me.
You guys have a lot more faith than I do.
Jess, Phil Jurkovec is transferring to Pittsburgh. Guess who's on Notre Dame's schedule next year?
Pittsburgh. Do you think he intentionally picked a school that had Notre Dame on the schedule? Because I think that'd be a very Phil Jurkovec thing to do.
I'm going to tell you, before I saw he committed to Pittsburgh, when I heard he was in the portal, the first thing I did was look at Notre Dame's schedule next year to see the teams on there, and it is like Pittsburgh obviously made sense. They lost Slovis this year, and so the first thing I did was look at that. If you're going to pick your new school solely based on that, then I think maybe it's time that Phil Jurkovec, again, like, does he need to go see his Robin Williams and have someone put their arm around him and say it's not your fault, Phil, and like get a little deeper into the brain and see what's going on inside there. But I will say this, Phil Jurkovec hates Notre Dame. We know this based on his IG post. Pat Narduzzi hates Notre Dame. We know this because of everything Pat Narduzzi has ever said about Notre Dame, basically. So it's like Papa Grinch and Baby Grinch going together. They can roll through Whoville and, steal all the roast beast and all that stuff. They seem like a perfect fit together. So whether or not he actually picked Pittsburgh based on the fact they're playing Notre Dame, I would not put it past him. Like I said, the first thing I did was look at the schedule to see who Notre Dame was playing next year. Lo and behold, not even a day later, Phil Jurkovec shows up at Pittsburgh. So,
yeah, I mean, John brought up a lot of good points. He's from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, yeah, they do have a
true,
good team.
true.
I'm just saying that it's like the cherry on top. Like it's like I wouldn't be surprised if it was like a 40%, 40%, 20% split. I don't think that it went unnoticed. I think that it was like the perfect, it sealed the deal for him where he's like, ooh, Pittsburgh seems like a good fit. And then he must have been like, oh, wow, they do play Notre Dame. And that was like, all right, that's the last thing I needed to do to seal my envelope. And that, I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's the main reason, but I definitely think it played some minor part. He definitely, it crossed his mind, and I'm sure he's thrilled that Notre Dame is on the schedule for Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Hey, he gets another chance. Maybe it'll work out for him, and maybe he'll roll in here to Notre Dame next year and try to teach us all a lesson again with another Instagram post. I guess we'll see. So did you see the Deion Sanders introductory press conference and the video of him talking to his players for the first time at Colorado?
I did. I watched the whole 8-minute clip on Twitter, I think like 2 days ago.
What did you think of the whole thing? I guess for those, I think maybe at least people have heard what, first he announces one of his sons as the new quarterback at the press conference. Then at the meeting with the team, he basically tells the team, get with the program or hit the transfer portal because he's going to bring in his own guys through the portal. He's bringing his own luggage in with him.
His exact quote is, I'm bringing luggage with me, and it's Louis, as in Louis Vuitton. And so I thought that so first and foremost, was the press conference a little bit extra? Sure. But who is Deion Sanders? Who is prime time? That is the definition. Like if you looked up extra in the dictionary, if one person's name was in there, it would be Deion Sanders, right? Like he does what he wants. He's always done what he wants. That's fine. And, going back to the comments of him saying, oh, we already have our quarterback. That's, my son. And then the comment about, hit the portal because I'm bringing in my own portal guys. Listen, I don't have anything wrong with that. Deion Sanders is acquiring a 1-11 school. They're 1-11 for a reason. The quality of players they have isn't, adequate for where they want to be as a program. And if you're a head coach coming into a situation like that, you set the standard as to what's expected and what's going to be expected going forward. And if you feel like you can fulfill and live up to the expectations that are what Deion Sanders is laying out for how he's going to run his program, then sure, stay. But he's giving you the option now to basically say, if this is too much for me, get out of here, because Deion Sanders isn't going to change. He's coming to set the bar, and he wants everyone else to rise to the bar just like he has. And so I have no issues with it because, again, he's setting his standard, and he's actually letting these guys know now. Like, if you want out, just get out, because it's only going to get harder from this point forward. And he knows he has guys coming with him that have proven that they can live up to his expectations and perform to his standards, essentially. So I have no problem with it. The only thing was it was extra, but again, that's who Deion Sanders is. So
this is what we talked about last week about how, Deion is Deion. And when Deion Sanders decided to become a head coach, I really, he wanted that Florida State job. He didn't get it. He, interviewed for some other Power 5 jobs, didn't get them. That's why he ended up at Jackson State. He went out kind of a little bit along the lines of Ryan Sandberg. He went out and rode the buses. You're not taking a lot of charter flights, I don't think, down there at Jackson State, unless Deion was footing the bill for him himself. But, he rode the buses and he paid his dues, and he proved that he could coach. And he also proved that he could recruit down there when he flipped the big time 5-star kid last year. And I haven't heard necessarily whether or not that guy's going with him to Colorado, but part of it is like, well, I think maybe as a player, you're in that situation when you're already at Colorado, you're thinking, hey, we got a new head coach, and it's Deion Sanders. He's going to come in and he's make us feel good about himself. He's going to tell us all these things that he's going to do for us and make us better. And then he basically calls them luggage and says, get your own luggage and get out of here, because I'm bringing my Louis Vuitton in if you're not ready to go. It's not like he pulled a Charlie Weiss at Kansas and just called these guys a big pile of garbage, steaming pile of whatever. But I tend to like it because as we've seen some of the comments here, they're 1-11 for a reason. And there is a such thing as the transfer portal. And what did we talk about earlier when we were talking about the portal? You can get better very quickly by using the transfer portal. And obviously, Colorado is in a place where they don't have the kind of guys who can get it done right now. And get with the program or get out. That's basically the bottom line in the message that Dion said. And as Vince and I were talking about yesterday, I think there's a little bit of that going on right now with Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame as well. Get with the program or get out. He's and I don't know that it's necessarily that blunt, but at the same time, I think there is, with Marcus Freeman, there's this level of talent that's coming in. And if you're not up to that level of talent, you need to know, hey, this is where you are. You can stay and compete, but you're not being guaranteed anything. And, if you don't cut it, you're going to have to get the door anyway. It's the same at Colorado right now. Either you're in or you're out. And again, I thought when Dion wanted to become a head coach, I thought it was going to be more style than substance. There's definitely a lot of style with it, but there's also a lot of substance behind it as well. So I think he's going to have some success out there. So I've got no problem with him doing things the way he did it.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, Dion is there to win. And so Colorado said, hey, whatever you got to do to win, that's up to you. But as long as you win, that's all we care about. And, it's just you got into something real brief, and I kind of want to get real brief on it too. I don't think Deion Sanders, when he became a head coach at Jackson State, thought that he would coach in the Power Five. I thought it was something that he wanted to do to help, basically revitalize HBCUs, put HBCUs on the map, let people know that they can compete. I don't know. I wasn't sold that Deion wanted to coach at the highest level. I think that he had success. He realized that he was good at it. He realized that it's something he can be passionate about. I think his kids playing also helped being able to coach them. But I mean, more than anything, I just think that, it's Deion, like someone said, Deion has always been Deion, and he's always been a winner. And so that's the trend. When you're a winner, no one can really, say anything to you because you consistently show that you're a winner, and you can't say anything to someone who's constantly winning.
And it's hard to, Hall of Fame players very seldom go on to be high caliber or Hall of Fame coaches, even high caliber coaches. Like when you look, it's very few guys who have been Hall of Fame caliber player. Like look at Michael Jordan. Now he hasn't coached, but he's having a hard time being an owner. I think a lot of these guys, and Magic Johnson tried coaching before, and there are plenty of others. Like they get in there, and I think because of the standard they had for themselves, I think now you've got to actually teach other guys to do it. You can't just show up and say, well, I did it. You need that kind of thing. So I think it's tough, but he has obviously found the right buttons to push, and he turned the Jackson State program around in a very short amount of time. Now it's a different level of football when you're stepping up to Power 5 compared to where he was, but he seems to have the right formula. So I think that I think it's going to be a matter of time. And it's not like the Pac-12, and especially the division that they're in the Pac-12 is so tough, that it's going to be really hard to overcome. I think he's going to have some success out there.
I do too. I don't think it's going to happen instantaneous, but he's definitely going to have success, and we're going to see Colorado drastically improve.
Right. Now, again, we were told that all we talk about when it comes to the NFL is the Dallas Cowboys. That is factually incorrect based on what we're about to talk about here. So after Jimmy Garoppolo's season ended this weekend with a broken foot, and after the Bengals knocked off the Chiefs Sunday, are you more convinced that the 49ers are done or that the Bengals are back as a legitimate contender now?
I believe that the Bengals are back as a legitimate contender. I think that it took a little bit. There's obviously the little bit of the Super Bowl hangover. Burrow had some stuff going on in the offseason. They've battled with, Jamar Chase. Now Mixon is out. I think the defense wasn't as good as it was last year, but things are starting to come together. They're on the back half of the stretch where it's a matter to be hot. And, last season they they weren't a super hot team in the beginning. They got hot towards the end. And to me, that Chiefs game is just, I think it's a game that proved more to themselves than it did to other people, essentially. I think that the Bengals needed to prove it to themselves so they could gear back up and essentially flip that switch, that same switch that, that they rode into the Super Bowl. I was never really sold on the 49ers to begin with. And then now you add the fact that Brock Purdy is going to be leading the charge. I know they have an excellent defense, but they remind me a lot of the Cowboys. They have an excellent defense, but the Cowboys are far ahead of them on offense, in my opinion. So they have a lot to make up for on offense. So I'm just not sold on them, but I do think that the Bengals are going to be legit contenders again in the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals, Purdy did not play horribly, and they still won that game. But at the, in that division is definitely winnable. They're sitting there at 8-4 right now. They're the number 3 seed, but they're only a game ahead of Seattle. I don't think they're going to completely collapse based on the schedule that they have in front of them. I think they play Tampa Bay coming up in their next game, so that is winnable, and that's interesting. And but the Bengals are also sitting there at 8-4, but they're tied for first place with the Ravens in the North. They'd be the 5 seed today with a chance to, still a legitimate chance to be the number 1 seed in the AFC, depending on how things shake out these last couple of weeks. So I am slightly more convinced that the Bengals are a legitimate contender just because of what you said. I mean, they started slowly. They started 0-2, then they were 2-3, and now look at them. They've won 7 of their last 8 games. They're 8-4 right now, or no, 6 of their last. My math is so horrible.
They've won 6 in a row.
They've won. Thank you. That's the easiest way to say it. They've won 6 in a row. The other one doesn't matter. They're on a roll. You just beat the Chiefs, so slightly more convinced that they are the contender versus the 49ers being completely done. I mean, the 49ers still have a good team around Brock Purdy, but I don't think that so I'm not going to say they're completely done, but they're not a contender by any means. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
So Bill Simmons said on his podcast, Tom Brady could return to New England next year. Do you think it could happen? Do you think it should happen?
I think could, yes, should, no. At the end of the day, no. I just don't see any sort of reunion with the Patriots. I think that he's done being cold. I think that in his age, he wants to be somewhere warm, and I don't think he wants to be playing, in November, December in New England. I think that a potential great fit for him is actually the team we just spoke about. I think the 49ers are an excellent team, and I've heard rumors around him even in this offseason. And I think that, again, it's going to be somewhere with a more warm climate so his body doesn't have to go under as much stress, and a team that has a good defense. And the 49ers had an excellent defense, and they have a run game. 2 things that Brady is lacking this year is a run game and the usual defense that he has. And I know, Craig, I don't think he retires. If you listen to them last night on the ESPN pregame, all these guys said that they believe that it's a matter of if he wants to, continue to play, because physically and mentally he's still there. It's just a matter of if he wants to get up and go through the grind of what it takes to, the season, the off season, the preseason, all of it. It's just if he wants to continue to gear himself up to do that. But I don't think there's any physical limitations, and I still think that we have potentially 2, maximum 3 years left in Brady's tank.
The guy is 46 years old. I think he could return to New England because of the close relationship with Robert Kraft. The Belichick thing, you look at that division, the whole division, with the exception of the Patriots, is better than when he left. The other 3 teams are a lot better right now. It's a tougher division than when he left it. And he's 46, and you can talk about the running game all you want there, but he still has Chris Evans or Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Julio Jones. It's like he's got players around him. How is that offense so horrible? How does it take until the end of just an ugly game for him to come back and win that game at the end with 3 seconds left on the clock last night? He's 46. We're seeing Father Time. Father Time catches up with everybody, especially when it comes to sports. We're finally seeing it catch up with Tom Brady this year. It took longer than anyone else ever, but they're 6-6, and that's in the worst division in the
They're in
league.
the playoffs.
Whether
Who
or not
wants
he
to
does
see
hang it up,
Brady
I
in the
don't know.
playoffs?
I think that Bill Simmons, because he is a Patriots fan, he was looking for reasons to put Brady back in New England next year because he's saying I don't see a Belichick Brady reunion happening one more time. And even if it did happen, I don't think it would necessarily be a happy reunion because he is, as Craig said, he is old. He is 46. He'll be 47 next year. It happens to everybody. It happened to Peyton Manning overnight. He went from a 50 touchdown pass guy 1 year to 2 years later. His legs were barely there, and he basically hobbled to a Super Bowl because of the defense that he had. The 49ers thing, I could see that potentially happening. They tried to get rid of Jimmy G fast anyway. I can see them take at a 1-year deal with all they've got there, but he's old, and he's getting older every day.
Yeah, I just don't think the age is what his limiting factor is, though. Like, I don't see any signs. Godwin's
He's
been
very
hurt in
smart
and out
still.
this season.
His smarts are what got him through that comeback last night. But
yeah, and that's all you need. His arm could be 50% and it'd still be 75% of most NFL quarterbacks because his brain and experience can make up for it.
right. Jess, we've got to end it on that because
we'll
you've
agree
got
to
get
disagree
going.
on this one.
Yes, we will. We will. We might have to resume it later this week. We've got plenty of other shows to go, though. We've got Mailbag Show, of course, coming up tomorrow. Vince will be in here with me. Jess, enjoy the basketball game tonight. I hope LeBron actually plays and he doesn't, sit, pull an opt-out for tonight back in his
They're
hometown.
on a heater. I think he's got to play, and this is the first leg of a road trip, so there's really no reason that he shouldn't. But if you jinx it, I'm going to be very upset.
All right. Stymie and Brady graduated high school the same year. Well, see, you're old too, Stymie. Well, I mean, if you were playing in the NFL, you would be old at 46 going on 47 or whatever it is. All right, that's going to do it for tonight. Again, appreciate you. As always, hit the like button on your way out. If you would, we will talk to you mañana right here, IB Nation Sports Talk.